Hello and welcome to Workshop 5 Microsoft Word 2010, brought to you by Shift Key Solutions, and I am Eric Ripley. During today's workshop, we'll be covering the following items. We're going to be formatting some text, adding a footer using quick parts, applying styles, formatting the document, paragraph spacing, and embedding and modifying a chart in the document. Before we begin, let's take a look at, during this video tutorial, I will be following along step by step the instruction sheet that accompanies this workshop. So let's take a look at what we'll end up creating. Here we have our sample text. This is our practice file. And over here is our completed document. If we take a look, we can see that it's completely different to include the footer. So let's begin. Step 1 tells us to download the practice file, which is Workshop 5 Word 2010, and save it to our computer. When it's downloaded, we're going to open it, as I have here. Step 3 tells us to save our first and last name at the end of the file name, as I already have by verifying. Here in my title bar, I can see that my first and last name is at the end of the file. Step 4 tells us to save the footer, and the footer will include our file name in the bottom left corner and the current date in the bottom right corner. So in order to do that, we're going to go to the Insert tab. I'm going to come over to my header and footer group and click footer. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. This is simply one of the ways. If we click footer here, we have a list of default footer styles, or we have these choices here. In this case, we would click edit footer and it would take us to our footer. Now an alternative to that is to scroll to the bottom of our document, and we can put our cursor in the area that the footer would be and double click. That's the way that I tend to use it and get to my footer. Otherwise, there's yet another way. We can come to our footer area and right click and choose edit footer. Either way, your objective is to get to your footer, and now you're in it. Once you're in your footer, we want to insert the file name. Well, in order to do that, we're going to come up to our Insert and use our good friend Quick Parts. So from Quick Parts, I'm going to come down to Field, and then from my list of field, I'm going to come down to File Name. Now from here, I can format it a little bit with uppercase, lowercase, first capital, title case, all these different things. I'm going to keep it as it appears in my title bar. When I'm done, I'm going to click OK. From here, I'm going to press Tab twice. When I do, it takes me to the right side of my footer. And I want to insert the current date with a particular style. So I'm going to come to my Insert and click Date and Time. From my list here, I'm going to choose the second one down. This is called the full date or long date. From here, I'm going to click OK. And there's my date. It is inserted. Now to get out of my footer, and you'll notice that everything up here is gray, that means that I'm actively in my footer. Now I want to leave my footer and go back to my document. Well, many people will come up and click Close Header and Footer. Well, I can just double click. You can also just double click into your document, and now I'm back in my document. I'll come up and go back to the top of the document. Step 4 tells us to select the first line or paragraph. Now let me show you a little trick. Right now, if I look at my document here, I see this as a line. Well, I don't know if there's another line between this line and the memo line. I don't know what's occurring there, and for that matter, what's happening between this space. Is that just a couple of blank lines, or is it one blank line, or is this line spacing modification that makes this space appear? Well, to see exactly what's happening in my document, I can come to my paragraph group, and I recommend this to everyone who's working with this file or any other file, so that you can see the formatting and paragraph marks of your document. From your paragraph group, I'm going to click the Show Hide button. This displays non-printing characters on your document. When I click this, I can see, okay, there's not a blank line here. This is line spacing that's been modified to this line or this line. There's not a blank line. So when I say this is the first paragraph, this refers to this paragraph mark right here. Okay, this would be the first paragraph. This is the second paragraph. Down here is a blank paragraph. Okay, because it has a paragraph marker on it. So this would be the third paragraph, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh paragraph, and then all of this would be the eighth paragraph. Okay, so needless to say, we're going to select this first line or paragraph, and I'm going to modify the style. So in order to do that, I'm going to come to my styles group, and I'm looking for a particular style called title. Well, in my styles group, I have a gallery of styles here. Okay, if I cursor over any one of them, it'll give me a preview of what it'll look like. And then over here is a nice More button. Every gallery that you ever come across will always have a More button. So I'm going to click the More button in the Styles gallery. From here, I can take a look at all the different styles that are applied right now. The style that we want to apply is Title Style. So I'll click Title Style. When I'm finished doing that, I'll go on to step 5. Step 5 tells me to select the second paragraph, or the line called Memo, and modify this. I want to apply the heading 1 style. So I'm going to come to my styles group and take a look at my gallery here, and I can see there's heading 1 now. So if I click this, it will apply. Step 6 tells me to select the to, the from, the date, and regarding. Select them all and apply bold. Well, there's a couple ways of doing this. Oh, it also says to include the colon after it. Well, I can select this, and then if I like, I can press Control on my keyboard and then make the next selection, and then while holding down Control, make the next selection and make the next selection. That's always one way of doing it. I can also place my insertion point at the beginning of the selection I want and hold down my Alt key. This is a kind of cool, neat trick. Hold down my Alt key, and with my cursor in that location, click and drag down, and notice that I can select a slice of the text. Either way, once it's selected, I'm going to apply the bold, and now they're all bolded. Step 7 tells us to select the paragraph that begins, "Please review the following information," and that's right down here. So I'm going to select this paragraph, and if I put my cursor over here in the hot spot and I click, it'll select one line at a time. Here's a question for you. How can I select an entire paragraph without clicking and dragging? If I don't want to click and drag here, an easy way to select a paragraph is to triple click inside a paragraph. So I can click 3 times here and it'll select the entire paragraph for me. It's kind of a neat little trick. Okay, back to our step here. So I'm going to select this paragraph, and I want to apply the intense reference style. So I'm going to come again to my styles group, click my drop down, my More button, and I'm going to look for intense reference. And there it is now. I'm going to click intense reference and it applies. Step 8 tells us to change the style set of our document here. So I'm going to click, just deselect here, and I'm going to come to my styles group, and over here where it says change styles, I'm going to click this, and then here's my style set. I have a long list of choices here. If I cursor over any one of them, it'll give me a live preview of what this document might look like. The one I want to choose right now is Modern. So I'm going to click Modern, and it applies that style. Step 9 tells us to change the paragraph spacing of our document to tight. Well, what that'll do is bring in our paragraphs a little closer together and what have you. So the way we're going to modify our paragraph spacing is, again, we're going to go to our Change Styles, drop down here, and down here where it says paragraph spacing, I get a long list of pre-formatted spacing. So if I go here, clearly there's no spacing, so everything's right next to each other. There's compact. If I cursor over this, if I cursor over any one of these, it gives me a preview or a description of what the spacing is. As you can see, it says open, that's what it's called, and then before it says 0 point, after says 10 points, and then the line spacing is 1.15. What that means is before refers to the paragraph, okay? And then the after refers to the paragraph as well. 0 points before the paragraph, 10 points after the paragraph, and then the line spacing is 1.15. Now, the one we want to choose is going to be the tight one here, which it clearly has 0 points before the paragraph, 6 points after, and 1.15 line spacing. So we'll click this, and it automatically formats the entire document for us. Step 10 tells us to press Control End on our keyboard. So I'm going to press Control End. That takes my insertion point to the end of my document, and I'm going to press Enter one time. And when I do, I create a blank paragraph down there. Well, from here, I want to insert a clustered bar 3D chart. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to our Insert tab, and then over in our Illustrations group, I'm going to click Chart. From here, I'm going to come to Bar Chart, or I'm sorry, on the left-hand side, it's Bar. And then from the bar choices down here, I'm going to come over to where it says Clustered Bar in 3D. So I'll click this, and then click OK. And when I do, it inserts the bar chart for me, but it also opens up my associated Excel worksheet. Now, I've had many people say to me, once I create my worksheet, once I embed this Excel chart in my document, where is my data saved? Well, it's not saved as an Excel sheet per se. What it is it's anchored. This Excel sheet is anchored and attached to this Word document. So the only way you can access this data is by opening this Word document and selecting your chart and then clicking Edit Data, and then you can have access to it. If you wanted to have a dynamic worksheet embedded into a Word document, then you have to have your data here saved or linked to another Excel worksheet. Okay, from here the instructions go on to tell us to insert some data into this Excel worksheet here. So we're going to go to cell B2 and start typing this year, and then continue on to enter the following information. I'll notice that as I start typing more and more information, I'll see my worksheet, the chart itself being modified. So I'm going to continue entering this stuff. When we're done entering this data, we're going to move to step 11. Step 11 tells us to take a look at our Excel worksheet here and notice that there's a blue border around this data in our worksheet here. What we want to do is modify our worksheet here to exclude Series 3 column. So in order to exclude this, I'm going to put my cursor in the bottom right corner here and click and drag to the left, and now I'll see in my work chart, and now I see in my chart in my document is modified to include only 2 columns of information, last year and this year. This is my legend. Step 12 tells us to close the Excel worksheet. or workbook. So we're going to come up and click close. And that'll expand our Word document. Step 13 tells us with the chart still selected, and I can tell it's selected because one, I have this border around it with the sizing handles here and here, but also I get my chart tools. If I do not have my chart selected, I will not have chart tools tabs available. So with this selected, I'm going to go to my design tab, and then I'm going to come over to my data group and click edit data. When I do, that opens up my worksheet again. Step 13 tells us in our worksheet here, we're going to go to cell B3 and type in 20. As we type this in, we can see in our work chart, our data will change, our chart will change. And I press enter. And then in B4, I'm going to type in 23 and press enter. And I can see that under historical for this year, that bar, that data bar, changed. When I'm done, I'm going to close the Excel worksheet. Brings me back to my workbook. Brings me back to my Word document. Step 15 tells me to change the chart to a clustered cylinder. Okay, in order to change this chart style from a bar chart, we're going to come up to our Design tab and come over to our Type group and click Change Chart Type. When I do, I'm going to get a Change Chart Type dialog box. From our dialog box here, we're going to come up and click on Column. And then it takes us to our column chart. From here, our column choices. From here, I'm going to look for the clustered column. Clustered cylinder. There it is. So I'll click this and then click OK. And now it converts our chart. Step 15 tells me to format the chart with a chart title and a vertical axis title. The chart title should say Tours Offered by Type, and the vertical axis title should say Number of Tours. So the chart title will appear above our chart here, and the vertical axis title is obviously going to be in our vertical axis here, because this is our vertical axis. This is our horizontal axis data. The vertical axis title will go just to the left of this. Okay, so here's how we format these. We're going to come up to our Layout tab. We're going to go to our Labels group, and here's our chart titles. We'll click this, and right here where it says Above Chart, I'll click this, and this brings up my chart title. While I'm here, I'm going to go to my Label group, go to my Axis Titles, and here's my Vertical Axis title. I'm going to come over and choose Vertical Title. And there it is. I'm going to click inside my chart title and type in the text. See, I click it and then select the text, and then I'll type it in. When I'm done typing my title, chart title, I'm going to come over to my vertical axis and enter that. I'm going to click and select this text and type in Number of Tours, or the £. That should have been a capital, so I'm going to arrow key up, and then press backspace and put capital T, Number of Tours. When I'm done, I'm going to click the corner of my chart here to deselect this and then select just my chart. Step 17 tells us to change our chart style to style 28. So in order to change this chart style, I'm going to make sure I'm on my Design tab and come over to Chart Styles group. And again, we're going to call this little button here a More button, because every gallery has a More button. We'll click this More button here, and we're going to look for style 28. These are all numbered sequentially, 12, 13, and so on. If we come down, we find 28 right there. So we'll click this, and it formats it a little bit, gives it some nice depth, and invites people to, read it and enjoy reading it for that matter. Step 17 goes on to tell us to change the shape style of our title. So in order to do that, I'm going to select my title. I'm going to go to my Format tab, and under the Shape Styles group, I'm going to click my More button for my gallery of styles, and I'm going to look for Color Filled Red Accent 3. So if I cursor over any one of these, well, that's an orange color, so I know that's not it. I'll go to my red colors. Red, it tells me right there, Color Filled Red Accent 2. That's the one we want. So I'll click this, and it applies it for me. I'll click my chart to deselect my title, but keep my chart selected. Step 18 tells us to change the font color of our vertical axis title to red accent 2 darker 25% and change the font size to 8. So in order to do that, we're going to select our chart title, and then I don't have to click and drag to select anything, because as long as the border is selected, any modifications will apply to everything in there. So I'm going to come over to our word art styles and click our drop down for text fill, and then I'm going to look for red accent 2 darker 25%. It should be this one right here. There it is. So I'll click this, and it applies the font color. Then I'm also going to change the font size to 8. So I'm going to right click on the border and use my mini toolbar here and change this to 8. I'll click my chart to deselect my vertical axis title. And then step 19 tells us to center align the chart. Yes, that's a train. So in order to center align our chart here, I'm going to go to my Home tab, and then in the paragraph group, I'm going to click Center. And it centers our chart. Step 20 tells us to change the height of the chart to 2.7 found in the size group. Well, in order to do that, I'm going to go to my Format tab. As long as my chart's selected, I'm going to go to my Format tab, and then over in the sizing group, here's my height and width. This is where I can be very specific in my height and width. I'm going to select my height and type 2.7 and then press enter. Well, where did it go? Well, I simply have to scroll up. There's my wonderful chart that we just created. Step 21 tells us in the Backstage view, which is the File tab, display the Properties panel. In the Author text box, I'm going to type my first and last name. In the subject, I'm going to type the WorkShop 5 Word 2010. So here's how we get to it. I'm going to go to my File tab, come over and click on the Properties drop down, and then click Show Document Panel. And then here it is. Under Author, I'm going to type in my first and last name, and then press Tab twice, and under Subject, I'm going to put in WorkShop 5 Word 2010. And then when I'm finished, I'm going to click the Close or X button up here, and it'll close down my panel. It doesn't delete any of that information, it simply closes it. From here, it tells me, step 22 tells me to ensure that I have my footer information in my document, and then save and upload this to the Dropbox. Otherwise, we've completed our tasks here. Let's take a look at it. That's our finished product. So if I turn my show height off, this is what it'll look like. Thanks for joining me, and stay tuned for the following workshops. Take care.